Welcome to the Travel Winds Podcast. Today my guest is Sean Gasaway, who is an award-winning singer-songwriter, publisher, record executive, boss man, all-around good guy. Is that about everything?
That sounds, I don't know about the all-around good guy.
Oh, yeah, I ad-libbed that.
That'll edit out.
You got a new podcast show going on. You got things. You got a lot of stuff, man.
Yeah, it's a show that I created called Mornings with Bacon, and Bacon's a character I created after doing some commercial work with the National Pork Board with Cowboy Troy. And, you know, it's turned into a really good idea. I wrote the whole show out on paper. We call it a treatment or whatever, and pitched it to the National Pork Board as well as some affiliates with some networks, and got a lot of interest really fast. And so I was like, man, maybe there's something to this. But the main thing about the show, if you don't mind me talking about it for a minute, is the need to open up a platform for up-and-coming artists that you just hadn't heard about, but are super talented, maybe even more talented than, you know, your mainstream artists out there. And so I wanted, you know, my show, the Mornings with Bacon show, to not only talk about food, because food's a big part of my life. I love food.
Yeah.
I grew up on the Gulf Coast between Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana and Florida. I mean, you got the whole Cajun connection right there. Everything between mahi-mahi all the way to Cajun crawfish, you know. And so I grew up with a very blessed area where I was always around decent food. And so I definitely want my bacon show to be about, you know, food and things like that. But the majority of it, I want it to be about music, breaking new artists. You know, one of the things I told the network folks was, you know, back before my time, there were people in the world like your Wolfman Jacks of the world that had complete access, and, well, not access, but had control of the content that they put out. And if something struck a chord with them in their heart, music-wise, you got played. You know, where today the radio world and even the playlist world, you know, you got to network super hard. You know, you got to know someone that knows someone just to get your music played. And my point is, how about let's play music that's actually touching folks and not just what's getting paid to be played? You know what I mean? So that was the whole concept behind my Mornings with Bacon show. Is I don't want to be like the modern Wolfman Jack, but I think there just needs to be more of us with an open heart like that will bring somebody on the show that nobody's heard of hardly and say, play your song, you know, and let the audience decide if it's something they're going to like or not.
See, you know, it's so weird you said Wolfman Jack. I actually met him. And
wow.
I was 18, 19 years old, and I'm old now. Hank Jr. was touring, and a guy I worked with knew the Bama Band, which was his backing band. And so I got invited to go, and so we go backstage because we were hanging out with the band at the hotel and all that, and then we took the bus right over to the Universal Amphitheater. So we go to the green room, and I'm like, hey, that's Waylon Jennings. Hey, that's Wolfman Jack. And they're all just sitting around, just talking, yapping it up before the show. And I'm like, I've lost my mind. At 18, you know, because my dad made us watch Wolfman Jack and the Midnight Special growing up.
How cool was that?
Dude, and now, you know, 30 plus years later, I'm like, oh, that was pretty good. That was phenomenal. Like just once in a lifetime.
Absolutely. And, you know, I've talked to a lot of my colleagues who are in the music business in the 50s, 60s, 70s, who all told me how beneficial someone like the Wolfman Jacks of the world was to the industry, having control of what they played and didn't have some corporate person telling them, you can't play that or you can't play this and stuff like that. How important that was. You know, there's so many artists that we would have never heard of had the present day rules applied to radio back then. And so when podcasts and these kind of platforms started popping up and becoming ways of being distributed and things like that, so it could get out to the masses, you know, it opened up the wild, wild west again is what I consider it. And, you know, in the music business, now you don't have to hire a promotion team. I mean, you can, but you don't have to hire a promotion team. You can just get out there and meet people just like you and I met, get on the show and tell your story, you know, and that's what I love about it.
You know, I think social media is a great thing. It can be bad, but it can be great. You know, so it's kind of however you want to use it for. It's like if you want to get into real negative stuff, you can do it. if you want to get into real positive. I mean, I look at what I'm doing now. I'm just a sales guy talking to people that I've always wanted to talk to, and they talk back to me now because I have a podcast show that's reaching people. And 10 years ago, you couldn't do that, or 15, I guess. I would have had to gone to a radio show, and then, like you said, I would have had to grease the wheels, work my way up, and now it's just like anybody can pick up the phone. So
yes, absolutely.
It's changing.
I'm a strong believer in the social media thing. You know, there are a bunch of ways that you can extend your reach through social media. You know, a lot of the young folks really become mastered at it. You know, if I put something on TikTok, I'm not going to get, I might get 1,000 views, and I call that a success. But, you know, someone like my 15-year-old daughter, for instance, she did a TikTok about K-pop a few months ago and got almost 1 million likes on it, you know. And the thing about social media is it's who you surround yourself with and how you know, I guess you can consider that like hashtagging and doing all the metadata stuff. You know, I guess if someone was listening to this podcast at the moment who were just kind of breaking into the business and trying to figure out how to extend their reach, I would strongly suggest they learn the term metadata and become a master of that.
So true. When I started this show, dude, it was like I called Cowboy Troy, said, "Hey, I'm nervous." He goes, "Dude, you talk on the phone all the time. That's what you do for a living." I said, "Yeah, but it's never recorded." So he just, you know, he gave me some tips and all that. And then it was like you said, learning metadata and tags and SEO and reach. And it's been a blast, but it's a different world.
Yeah, you know, and it creates new opportunities, you know, and that's another thing that,
absolutely,
you know, I would stress on folks who might be listening to the show that's trying to be more creative with their strategies and all that stuff. I sound like I got a degree and all that. I don't. I went to high school, graduated, learned how to become an electrician, and I worked in the trade field for several years before I went to the music business full time. And I learned everything I know about the business from the street and just doing it. But, you know, there are things, number one, you have to learn something new every day if you can.
Yeah.
You know, I seen someone the other day who labeled themselves metadata strategist, like an official job name, you know. And I thought, you know, I'm not cutting the legs out from under someone, but I just thought, you know, this person here has learned how to use metadata in such a way that it explodes someone's content by their, you know, that was a job that wasn't here just 2 years ago. And, you know, one of the best things I've heard recently was at a graduation. I went to one of my family nieces or nephews graduated a couple of summers ago, and the person that was giving the speech, he said, the jobs of the future are not even created at the moment.
Absolutely.
He said, you know, 30, 40 years ago, there were jobs that were there then, and you knew they would be there, like the railroad, for instance. You know, if you got on with the railroad, you would retire from the railroad. Pretty much, but
that's kind of like Montgomery Gentry song, "My Town."
Yeah,
I mean, that's what,
yeah, absolutely.
Just
but you know, and I jotted down what the guy said. He said, listen, he said, the world is wide open. You know, with technology, he said there is a job out there for you. It just hasn't been created yet, and look for those. You know, and so, you know, basically telling people to make your space and create it. And so like I said, I seen it the other day when I seen this guy's title of his company. His title was metadata strategist. And I was like, oh my God, I'd never thought of that.
I've told this story a few times on my show, but I'm going to share it with you. I'm 53. When I grew up, my dad said, work hard, bust your ass, do a good job, be honest, show up on time, show up early, and you'll get by. I had a neighbor, and I'm in the Los Angeles area, so that might help you, but he and his boyfriend, which I'm cool with, literally had no job other than putting makeup on himself. So he became a social media influencer, putting makeup tutorials on himself. And then his boyfriend would videotape it, edit the video and all that, and made enough money by the makeup companies paying him that he didn't have to go out and get a job, and lives in the Los Angeles area, which isn't cheap. And that's how he makes his living.
And I have no doubt that even my daughters here in Middle Tennessee are subscribers to their channel. I have no doubt about it. Both of my daughters are, their passion is that world, the makeup world, the salon world, the hair, the hair world, all that stuff. There's so many opportunities out there in this day and age that you can basically create it for yourself. Now, what did these people do if you dig deeper? Well, somehow or another, they got connected to the makeup industry. And those are the details that you really would have to dig deeper in. And that's, I appreciate you sharing that story because, it gets me to thinking, what would I tell not only myself, jotting this down, but what would I tell someone venturing out in the world and trying to make a name for themselves is find those people, send them a DM or something and say, okay, I love your channel. What exactly did you do between the tapings? Like when you spoke with the makeup companies and things, what did you do? What was your pitch to them to get them to come on board and pay you to do these? And then YouTube and these other channels, there's strict copyright laws that deal with advertising dollars going to the creators. Yeah. And so that's kind of a baseline. I mean, so if you put something out on YouTube as a creator and it gets millions and millions and millions of views, you're owed money, especially if they run ads on it. So that's a given. But it's the little things that this couple did in the background, speaking with the makeup companies and things like that really work the deal. And that's what I try to get in people's mind is become that way of thinking. What did they do? So I'll give you another example if we have time. It's okay. It's like the pork chop song.
So true.
So when we wrote the pork chop song and recorded it, even Troy will say, man, we did this song as a joke. It was meant to be just a comedy piece. It was just meant to be, it wasn't meant
for
it to be anything. And I came home from the session with a copy of the master, and put it in my Dropbox. And I thought to myself, I have nothing else to do at the moment today. I'm going to find out, this is all true story. I said, I'm going to find out who the marketing vice presidents are for certain companies that do pork chops. And one of the companies was Carl's Jr. / Hardee's. One of the companies was Kraft Shake and Bake. And one of the people was, when I Googled, the National Pork Board came up. And I thought, I didn't know there was a National Pork Board.
Let's go straight to the source.
They're kind of like, they're kind of like the beef people,
Absolutely.
That you hear about. And so doing some Google searching, you'll never find a direct email address for any vice president of a company. But what you can find are little nuggets like, what's the company's email address? How is it built? For instance, Shake and Bake was ... at craftfoods.com. So I said, okay, I do know that's the email address that they received. Now I just had to put a name with it. And so I found these marketing vice presidents' names, just Google searching, and I put it together with their company email addresses, and boom, I write this real brief email, and I run it with Troy and our other partner, Michael. I run it by them. I write these real brief emails that say something like, who doesn't love a pork chop? Well, we sure do. We even wrote a song about it, and we recorded it with national recording artist Cowboy Troy. How cool would it be to do a campaign ad with Cowboy Troy using our song Pork Chop? We can take this countrywide. That's all the email said. And then it said, here's a direct link. Here's a safe, private, direct link to the song. Click here to listen. Would love to hear back from you. Sean Gasaway, Operations Officer, Shake and Bacon Productions was the name of the record label we created. And I sent this email to several of these marketing vice presidents on a whim, just an idea that came to my head. And the only people I never heard back from was Hardee's. But I got a response from Kraft, the vice president of Kraft, who emailed me back and said, oh my God, what a song. We love this. Here's who runs our Shake and Bake division of the company. Talk to them. And then the National Pork Board responded back and said, oh man, what a song. We love it. But that's all they said.
Yeah.
And so we communicated with the shake and bake brand of craft for a little bit. But it felt like they were kind of timid on pulling the trigger, so we didn't push it. We just said, okay, whatever. And then Troy went and did a concert. I want to say it was in the Midwest somewhere, but Troy had a concert with Big and Rich. And I remember him calling me, and he goes, hey, man. I was like, what? He goes, guess what happened to me today? And I was like, what is it? He goes, after my set with Big and Rich, security came up to me and said, hey, there's a lady here that wants to meet you. She is the vice president of marketing with the National Pork Board. And so he brought her back to where the green room was, and that was her thing. She goes, we love this pork chop song. We want to use it in commercials. I have a meeting with the board of directors next week. Can we put a marketing plan together to get them to approve it? We want to work with it right now. And that's how that happened. You know, without being long-winded about the story and everything, you know, that's, you know, just even more advice to folks out there who is trying to, you know, make a mark for themselves, get their creative juices out there, but actually do it in a way that they can monetize it and support their family with it. You know, is you got to think outside the box. And luckily I had some corporate experience in my past. And so I knew, you know, part of the strategy that I knew was I couldn't send them an MP3, because anytime you send a corporation an email with a file attached to it, their security systems are going to flag it. It's not going to get through.
Yeah.
But you can put a link to something in the email, and it normally gets through. And that's what I did. I just linked the song so I put a link in the email that took it right to my private Dropbox. You know, so it was those little things that worked, but that's the little things that I was talking about earlier. You know, reaching out to that couple with the makeup, you know, doing the makeup tutorials, is what were those little things that they did that made deals happen. And one of the biggest things that I know that, you know, it's a flaw of human nature is you ain't going to learn nothing unless you ask. You're not going to gain anything unless you ask. If you're scared of no's, you'll never make it. You have to ask the questions and just be prepared for the answer. But unless you ask, you're never going to learn anything. Anyway, I'll get off of that. I thought it was a cool story to tell.
You were basically sharing my life story. The number one question I get asked by other podcasters when I meet them or talk to them is, how did you get all these people on your show? And my number one response is, I asked them. So I'll give you a little background. My daughter, my youngest daughter, the one that just moved to Morristown, is literally a huge reason why I started my podcast. Growing up, you know, as being a dad, I have two daughters, and I want to instill in them, hey, you know, you can be whatever you want to do, you know, you know, just you got to work hard, be great, do this and that. My daughter graduates high school. She's going to go to college for screenwriting in LA. And her favorite music band was 30 Seconds to Mars, the Jared Leto band. And they put on Facebook that they're looking for an intern. And she goes, do you think I should apply? And I go, yeah. I go, worst case scenario, you get to tell people you applied to work for Jared Leto.
Absolutely.
So she applies. She goes, oh my God, they want to interview me. Should I go? And I go, yeah. Worst case scenario, you get to say you have interviewed for a job with his company. She comes back. They want to hire me. It's an internship. It's 2 days a week because she was in college full time. She goes, should I do it? I go, yeah. I go, yeah, yes. You know, it's a job. I go, you know, these people are working for their lives, honey. I go, you know, this isn't a cool fan thing. This is people working. So she goes, I know. She goes to work. She does a good job. They offer her to go on tour to help out with their social media on the tour. And they're opening up for Lincoln Park. And she goes, you know, should I go? And I go, yeah. I'm like, for one, you'll never be able to do this when you need money because you have to have money. So she does it. And then that was her last gig with them. She did some other internship stuff. And then she calls, I'm literally at NFR. I'm in Vegas. And I told my daughter, I said, look, and she was second or third year. No, it was going to be her senior year of college. I go, hey, I'm at work. I'm running the booth. I have people working for me. Only call me if it's important. And she goes, okay. So all of a sudden, middle of the day in Vegas, I'm looking at my phone. It's my daughter calling. I'm like, shit. So I pick up the phone and said, hang on. I tell my people in my booth, I'll be right back. I go out to the hallway and I go, hey, what's up? She goes, I got a job today. And I go, that's great, Allie. I'm at my job. I go, what's up? She goes, I got a job working for Kim Kardashian. And I go,
wow.
I go, excuse me? I go, how, why, when, what? What are you talking about? She goes, I got the job today. I had an interview at her house, and they hired me. And I'm like, okay. And I go, well, that's great. And so I called her back, and everyone asked her, how did you get that job? You know how she got it? She applied. That's it. She didn't know anybody at the Jenner Communications or anything. She had a good reference from Jared, but she just applied and got the job. So she worked for Kim for 6 months her last semester, which saved me money. I actually made money off Kim Kardashian because she saved me paying tuition for an extra class. I was happy about that. And, and she met Kanye and worked at the house and did all that. And like you were just saying, if you don't apply, if you don't ask, you don't get it. So
that's exactly right, man. That's a cool story, dude. Yeah, I mean, we're like on the same wavelength, man. And and living in the South, the wrestling business in the South is huge. Now, but I will say that the World Wrestling Entertainment Company, who my friend Mickey works with and all, they're worldwide. So they're huge everywhere. But really, even Mickey James will tell you that the South is like completely just still to this day is in love with wrestling. So I have a lot of friends of mine over a period of years that, I might have reconnected with through Facebook or whatever. They always ask me, how in the world did you meet Mickey James? How in the heck are you doing music videos with her, like me and her playing, her singing while I'm playing guitar for her or whatever on the song we wrote or whatever? How in the heck did that happen? And it's the same story. About 6 years ago, I was asked to call in to a radio show in New York to talk about not only some new music that I was putting out for my personal artist music, my personal artist stuff, but some things that I was doing with our veterans on the songwriting side, I was just starting to get into. And so it was a radio show that was owned by a record label, and that record label, I think it's called Heart Songs. I think that's the name of it. But anyway, but that record label's thing is the money, the profits that they made, they gave a percentage of it to like the Wounded Warriors people, these veterans groups. And so the owner of the record label called me and she said, hey, would you mind coming on my radio show and talking about your new music? And I was like, absolutely. So I called in to this New York station, and the guest host of the day was Mickey James. And so
just timing.
So Mickey and the other host of the show, were asking me questions, and they said, hey, we're going to play a single off of your new album, and we'll be right back. And they were playing it. So while they were playing it, we could still talk to one another, but we were cut off from the radio interview itself.
Yeah.
And Mickey was like, oh my God, what a song. I really love that song, Sean. I'm so glad you made it on this. And we didn't know each other. That was the first time I ever talked to her, And because I was doing the fan thing. I was like, Mickey, I'm a huge fan. I love wrestling. Where I grew up, all we ever watched was wrestling. I love it. And so she was like, Sean, what a song. I really love that song. And I just kind of, not in a cocky way, but just kind of in a nonchalant way, I said, well, if you like that song, you should hear some of the female songs I've written. And she goes, oh my God. She said, I just signed with Sony and I'm fixing to do a new album. I need some songs. Here's my phone number. Here's my email address. Send me whatever you have that's available to be cut. And that's how I met Mickey, because I opened my mouth.
That's how it is, though, man. Cowboy Troy, it was so important for me on my podcast show because I figured I had about 5 to 8 friends that I knew I could, or I thought I could count on for the show. And then I was like, man, I'm going to have to start reaching out to people. And then Troy was my second episode, and a guy named Smush Parker liked my Instagram post. And Smush Parker was a point guard for the Los Angeles Lakers in the Kobe time frame. And I'm like, that's a Smush Parker, like my photo. I'm like, what the So I DM'd back. I said, is this really Smush Parker? And he's like, yeah, man, I'd like that post. It was great. You're doing good things. I'm like, hey, would you mind being a guest on my show? And he's like, yeah, that sounds great. Give me a few weeks and I'll set it up. And I was like, holy crap. Like, just holy crap. Smush was like my 10th guest or 11th. And then I had a football player on, Dennis Franks, who played for the Eagles. He was Vince Papale's roommate. So I don't know if you've ever seen the movie with Mark Wahlberg, Invincible.
Yeah.
So the guy with the knuckles and the beard, that's Dennis Franks. So
that's cool.
I reach out to Dennis Franks. He said he'd do the show. He's a public speaker now. And he does the show. And then I reach out to a guy named Pete Koch. If you ever saw Heartbreak Ridge with Clint Eastwood.
Absolutely.
Pete Koch is Swede.
Oh, okay.
Big boy. I didn't know at the time, but he was playing for defensive line for the Los Angeles Raiders. He was at the end of his career, so that's when he started doing movies, and he got put in that movie. I reach out to Pete, who's still here he's a physical trainer, model, actor in the Venice Beach area, and I reach out to him, and he says he'll do it. So when we started doing it, he goes, "Yeah, I went on your website and I saw that you had Dennis Franks on the show, and Dennis and I are friends from way back in the day." So you're just like, okay, it's just weird how things work out when you put it out there.
Right. Absolutely, man. Sure is.
How much traveling pre-COVID and now post-COVID, how much traveling were you doing for not just singing and performing, but like, you were telling me you're going up to Canada and you're out in LA. How much traveling have you been doing?
I do a good bit. Now, the Canada thing, I'm doing something for the first time. I'm not going up there because they kind of got their borders shut down and all that stuff right now. So I'm going to be, so I didn't mean to say I was going to Canada. I'm fixing to produce a record there.
Okay.
Which, I guess you could construe that I'm going there, but I'm actually going to Zoom produce, which is something I've never tried. I don't even know how it's going to work. But here's the thing about the Canadian market, for those that don't know about the music part of it, is if you've got a Canadian artist who, wrote a good part of their work. So in other words, like one of the songs I'm recording with her name's Cambry Lovesy, and she's an amazing country recording artist from Canada. I think she's 21, 22 years old. So she's really up and coming, starting to come out of the gate swinging hard with some really great songs. And she's really good and talented. And her and I wrote a song together that's going to be one of the tracks on the record. But the way the Canadian music business works is you want to have what they call a maple mark on your record.
Yeah.
So that basically says everything about the song needs to be done in Canada. Yep. The production, the writing, and things like that. And so that's what we're going to shoot for her new album, is everything on the album is going to be Canadian born and produced and made. And so I'm actually going to do what I call consult producing. So I'm going to zoom in on it and try to, just give the musicians some creative ideas and things like that, what a producer does or whatever. But to answer your question, before COVID, me personally, as an artist doing festivals and different things like that on the singer-songwriting front, I played about 150 shows a year. And then last year, all of April and most of May was shut down. But when the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, the governor, when he opened Florida back up, it basically opened up everything for folks like me. I just do acoustic shows, just me and my guitar.
Yep.
And so we were able to do capacity restrictive, social distance, mask wearing kind of shows. And so I still ended up doing almost 75 to 100 shows in 2020. And this year is going to be the same. It's starting to open up a little bit more. I've already did 2 little tours already. I'm going to Panama City next week for some stuff, some private events. And then I'm going to Texas in March. I'm going to the Ozarks in May. I'm going back to the Ozarks in August and back to the Ozarks again in September. So the Ozarks in Missouri are really starting to open up more with some of their events. Then I got festivals at the end of the year. So I'm liable to do another 100 to 150 shows this year if everything opens right back up. And that, and not just shows, but like part of my trip to Texas is a mix of shows. And I'm also doing some consulting work for a booking company that works with the bigger arenas in Texas with our artists, because they're starting to get a sense that maybe late 2021, it may open back up. And so I'm going down there to meet with the booking agency that I consult with, just getting them mentally prepared, the artists, not the executive team, but the artists, getting them mentally prepared to get their business structure in order so that when they do start playing the bigger shows, so I'm talking about like 5,000 to 15,000 capacity kind of shows, So when the artists that they're working with, they have their music business stuff in order so that when they do go back to working these shows, they start getting the performance royalties they owe correctly. Because, that's another part of the business I'm in is, I know the music business like the back of my hand, especially when it comes to performance royalties and things like that for people that write their own music and things like that. It's a big chunk of money that gets lost, and it goes into pockets of people that don't deserve it. And so, one of my big things on my heart is teaching these performers how to get their business, their music business side in order so that they can collect that money and it not go into somebody else's pocket. So that's also another part of my business that I do. And then I produce records in different areas. So I'm hoping,
something's going to hit.
I'm hoping things open back up so that more people can take advantage of I have a lot of friends. I'm not gonna lie to you. I got a lot of friends who, COVID ruined, and not from not from getting it and get sick. I'm talking about financially.
Heck yeah. A lot of.
They depended on the 200 plus shows a year that they played as their living. I play 100 shows a year because I enjoy doing it. It's not a big, it's not even it's just a small piece of my whole enterprise. But I do have friends that need those 200 plus shows a year just to put gas in their vehicle, just to buy groceries and things. So the thing that I try to teach them is like, look, well, when you play these shows and you're playing your original music, now I know I know these artists mix cover songs into their set, but there are, you do play some of your music that you create. A lot of them do, they make their own albums, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, but when you play these shows, you're owed a performance royalty down the road for doing those shows, and they don't even know it. And, you can pay your mortgage, your gas for a month, your grocery, you can pay for all of these things in a month just from performance royalties, but they don't even know how to get it, and so like the booking company in Texas, for instance, that's why they brought me on, was they wanted me to show their artists, here's what you got to do to get your business in order so that when you start playing these big events again, you'll start getting these performance royalties that you've never gotten before. So that if another COVID happens,
you got something.
I'm getting performance royalties. My February statement just came in. I'm getting performance royalties. I had a deposit on my check account this morning from shows before COVID between January and April of last year. And so that's kind of the spread of how far apart it is from the time you play before you get paid for them.
Yeah.
So,
that's huge.
So if COVID had shut me down completely, I was getting paid monthly. I was getting paid every quarter, but sometimes it's monthly. It depends on how you get it set up. But I was getting paid pretty much monthly without even having to go to work about it, and I didn't have to get unemployment and do it. I wouldn't have had to do any of that, and so that's what I'm trying to teach these artists now is if you can really get your music business set up correctly and you do play a lot of these shows and you start racking them up and you get them shows in the system as, what we call logging your shows. So if you get the shows logged in your publishing company and stuff like that in your songwriting account, if another COVID happens, you're going to have income coming in from the past. So, and a lot of them, like I said, I've probably said this a million times, they just don't know.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I'm here to tell you. I'm here to tell you that's how it works.
And that was really why I was super excited to talk to you, because I knew you were traveling, you're touring and playing, but you got so many other things going on. It's cool. I mean, I don't know that a lot of people, you see a show. I'll give you an example. I interviewed a guy named Chris Gratton, and he's a tour manager. And I talked to him, I think 2 weeks right after he had just laid off 83 of his people. This was last April. He's a tour manager for Justin Bieber. So I'm sure people were upset that Bieber wasn't going on tour, but they don't realize that those 83 people, that's what they had geared up for and set aside 6 months of their life to be on tour. So it's not like you can be a tour guy, boom guy, or, any of the truck drivers. You can't just go out and get another touring job when no one's touring. So what do? You're just done.
You're talking my language, man. I had the same exact conversation almost with an industry person just a few days ago in regards to the country artist that got caught on TMZ saying some ugly words. And the outcry was, for the most part, from a lot of from a lot of folks was, well, forget him. We're going to cancel that, person out and blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, if you're going to pray for anybody, we need to pray for the people that that nobody's talking about. And that's the tour management company, the songwriters that wrote songs on the album that may get pulled. Now, I don't think they did get pulled, but I'm just saying this was before all that went down. This was right after it happened. I said, here's the people that it's really going to affect. And that's the people downstream. The whole tour production team, they had a tour book. And so all those shows got canceled, not because of COVID, but because of his actions.
Yeah.
And so I said, that's the people that we need to be praying for, because they had their whole year of income, on paper. Like, here's how we're going to pay our budget this year, and their home budget, and I'm like, we need to be praying for those folks, because your actions in the music business, especially artists, and I sent word to the artists that I'm working with that are young. And I was like, y'all learn a lesson from this. The biggest lesson is you're always going to be on tape. You're always going to be in somebody's camera. The big eye don't lie. That's what an old football coach told us when we were playing high school football and we had to watch film the next day after the game if we got beat. He says, the big eye don't lie. We're going to find out what you did in this game last night, And so that's what I tell these young artists is the big eye don't lie, and it's always on you. And so you have to, no matter what, you have to always in the back of your mind know that you might be getting videotaped, you might be getting recorded. So you need, keep your character, keep your integrity intact at all times.
Man, and that's never been more true. As easy as it is for me to get my show out to 100 plus countries, if I say the wrong thing or whatever, it can implode just as easily.
Yeah. And it's nothing in today's technology world to turn someone off. The block, there's so many, the triggering, and that's one of the biggest problems with the cancel culture. I'm not a fan of it at all. I'm a fan of grace and forgiveness, because, I've done my share of crap, had I done it today instead of 20 years ago, I probably, there's no telling if I'd have got canceled or whatever in the industry. But my faith teaches about forgiveness and about grace. And I believe that everybody deserves a chance, a second chance, a redemption or whatever. So I'm not a fan of cancel culture, but man, the way technology is built today and the way things can be turned on or off, switched on or off, you literally get canceled. There's no, it's not a broad statement. It's a true fact. If the cancel culture people put you in their crosshairs, it doesn't take much to really cancel you out. And so it's just, you got to stay on top of it all times, man.
I've told my daughters many, many a times, I am so glad we didn't have cell phone cameras when I was a kid, when I was their age.
Woo, Lord.
Man,
you ain't kidding. And it's even in the social media world, I've told my daughters many times, I was like, be careful what you tweet or whatever you put out there, because it's a footprint. And even corporations now will, they have people on staff that will check your socials and see,
absolutely.
If there's anything you might have said, when I was in the corporate, this discussion came up recently in something I was part of as a speaker or whatever about, can a company really fire you for something you say on Facebook? And I was like, absolutely. When I was in the corporate world and I moved up as an officer of the company, one of the biggest parts of the contract said, you are a representative of this company 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if you do something that embarrasses this company, we will fire you. I mean, that's what it says, you know, and so absolutely all of that stuff matters, you know, and it's just crazy, man. I just, you know, I try to focus as much as I can on the creative side. And when I say creative side, not only the creation of music, but creating entrepreneurial opportunities for the music. And so that's what I try to focus as much of my time on.
I'm the same way with my show. I'm like, I told my wife, I said, if I could get somebody to edit for free and publish it and do all that, it'd be great. You know what I mean?
I heard that.
It's like, I love talking to people. I love setting up the interviews and all that. But I mean, I don't think people understand how much work goes into it. Once I record this, it's like, I got to edit the audio, which I had never done before, you know?
Yeah.
I learned everything. It was like, learn a whole new business.
Well,
and you got your podcast, so.
Yeah. And I'm putting an awkward break in here for a minute because this is something you might want to edit out, but I was going to tell you, you know, off the podcast record, I have a colleague who does a podcast for the Heroes Media Group. So they're basically, it's about veterans and veterans things and stuff like that. But she has someone that she pays $20 a week. It's like an intern, like a young person. If she pays them $20 a week, they got the software to do audio editing, and she lets them do all the editing and stuff for her show. She tapes it, she sends it to them, she gives them $20, and they do one of her shows for her. And she told me that was a life changer in her world. I'm just throwing that out there. If that was something you'd be interested maybe in reaching out to her about, saying, hey, who's these kids doing this editing for you? You may have someone there right close to you that might could do it, you know?
Yeah, I know.
Because she said the same thing. She said, because when she was asking me about my podcast, and she's like, you have somebody edit it? You going to try to do it yourself? And I was like, well, in the beginning, I'm probably going to have to do like the audio stuff. I have video software. I can upload a WAV file into it and edit it pretty quickly. But this is going to have, you know, my show eventually is going to have a video component to it. You know, it's going to be videotape and audio tape too. And so I said, now that part I'm going to have to sub out. And then she was just going on about what she finally ended up doing, getting her stuff edited. Now, I don't even know if there's any money for her show being made. I have no idea about the economics of it and stuff. But I heard it was worth the $20 to get them teenagers or whatever to edit her show for, because she said it was a headache. So I feel your pain, man. I've heard that story a time or two.
Well, it's interesting. I have some friends. A guy named Jason Southard. He played with. I don't know if you ever heard of Christian Kane. He did a column. He's an actor, and so Jason was the guitarist in his band, and my clothing company outfitted them. They were going to open up with Toby Keith at the Oklahoma gubernatorial ball or whatever. Wow. Anyway, so I met Jason at our warehouse and, you know, got him cowboy boots because he's not a Western guy, you know. That's the interesting thing. A lot of the background guys, they're musicians. So, you know, if you're a guitar player and you want to make money, yeah, I can play country. Yeah, I can play rock. Yeah, I can play Southern rock. Yeah, you know what I mean? So, so I set him up, and he loves the editing and all that because that's, you know, his background. So it's just interesting.
Yeah, there's some people that love it, and there's people like me that I'd much rather be doing something else. So I'd rather give that to somebody.
I hear you, brother.
Even producing records, you know, I have, you know, one of the questions that gets tossed to me sometimes is, hey, can you look at this music chart that I wrote for my song and tell me if there's anything I could add to the chart and all that stuff? And I'm like, man, I don't read charts. I wish I would have went to music college and learned how to write charts and read charts. I was like, but that's why I hire musicians that know how to read.
Yeah, exactly.
Charts. And I said, so the best thing we can do is let's take your song and your chart to my pianist, and then, you know, we can go through the song, and if there's any ideas creatively we can come with, we'll speak it in a music, you know, language. And they're like, what do you mean by music language? Well, and I say something like, well, let's just say at the end of verse 1, you know, we want to hear a musical piece that goes la da 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 into the chorus. I said that la da 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 is musical language, and my pianist can actually find those notes on the piano and say, okay, here's the notes, and write it down on the chart, And I said, that's how I chart a song, is I sing it. That's my big thing, is always having a team around me of people that know how to do their job really well and getting them on my team. It's like, okay, that's your job. Your job is going to be that. You're my sound engineer, so your job is going to be, I have another question like, hey, man, what's your favorite mic? What's your favorite microphone to use on a female artist that has a raspy tone? And I'm like, whatever microphone my engineer plugs in sounds best. I don't know a name of it. I don't know what, I don't know if it's a Neumann SR178, I don't know any of that. What I do know is when it hits my ears, if it sounds good, that's the one I want to use, and I said, I don't have any patience to try to figure out what the specs are on every microphone that we have in the studio. That's what my engineer's job's for, and so that's kind of how I roll when it comes to that business stuff.
We are living parallel lives. I got into a little discussion on a podcast platform where the guy was an audio engineer, and he has a podcast about podcasting. And he's like, audio is the most important thing, and and I'm like, and I was like, well, first 80 shows I had were literally recorded on my iPhone using my iPhone earbuds. I don't like the audio of them, but I got them done.
Right.
I literally spent no money when I first started. My daughter found me the app that recorded off my phone. I learned to tape the earbud by my mouth so it wouldn't move around, so it'd be a constant sound. I was talking to Grammy winners that way. So
and just your speaking voice, your tone and everything. I'm sure when that translates to the podcast audio itself, it's going to sound great. It has a good tone to it. I've done podcasts as a guest in the past where I can immediately tell, like, man, the audio on this may not be too good. But it wasn't something that was bothering me. It just sounded like the person I was talking to was in a tunnel.
Yeah.
So it was like, hey, Sean, how are you doing today? And stuff like that. And I was like, man, I hope that comes a little bit better across, because I was even having trouble understanding
the person. Yeah.
Some of the, it just sounded like, I guess what I would say, it sounded like I had a lot of mid-range equalization, EQ in it, and it just sounded like it was muddy. And
now I'm on a Rodecaster. I have a mixing board, and I have an AKG mic and a pop screen and all that fun stuff. I got beginning live.
That's cool.
Yeah. I went to my wife, said, okay, I've done I think about 100 shows back then. Said, I'm going to do a few more, so let me get something. So I spent a few on it. So it's a blast, man.
And I can't say this enough, and I definitely don't want to forget to say it. I really appreciate the invite, coming on your show and talking. It's been a great interview too, because it hadn't really, a lot of folks that reach out to me want to go really in depth in the music business, and I kind of get scared of that sometimes, because I don't want to overwhelm like a new artist or somebody that's coming up and trying to figure things out. I want to try to keep it at a level where, even a teenager could understand, or someone younger. I think we got a lot of good data into this conversation to at least give some folks some hope, whatever industry they're going into, it gives them some hope that, hey, if this Sean Gasaway guy who graduated high school in South Mississippi and just has his own music business many years later that is, in my opinion, extremely successful. Everybody's opinion of success is different. I get to make a living in the business I'm in. I don't have a job. This is my job, and I get to do my dream. I get to live my dream. So to me, that's success. And
well, I mean, you do have over 200, as they call it, revenue earning copyrights. So I mean, you got four number one.
I used to have that. You know what? When I first wrote my bio, I put cuts in there, and because that's the terminology a lot of people around town use. Man, he's got a lot of cuts. But, you can have cuts that don't earn revenue,
Exactly.
and so So that's not one of my partners. His name's Michael Garvin. I haven't got to talk to him about him much in this call, but Michael wrote the song Waiting for Tonight for Jennifer Lopez, but he's also written like 23, 24 more number one country songs that were number ones in country. So one of the things that Michael, he always calls his cuts his copyright. And he taught me that. And then I was like, he's like, well, there's a difference between, a cut and a copyright because the copyright earns revenue. And I was like, you are 100% right, boss. And so I went into my bio years ago when I was first writing it, and I changed it from, back then it only said 75 cuts,
Yeah.
So over the past 3 years, it's went from 75 to over 200. So I've really been working hard. I mean, really, just last night I had someone tag me on TikTok of them doing some lasso work in a club up in New York.
I saw that.
He's a cowboy that lives in New York. He has a farm. He has cattle. He's a true cowboy, but he's a recording artist. I would put him in a class like George Strait and Chris Ledoux.
Okay.
That kind of country music and
twanger.
But he's, his next single is a song that I wrote with, and that's how I found out. He tagged me in his TikTok last night, giving y'all a sneak preview of my upcoming single, and he's doing this lasso work, and I'm like, man, I just got another song recorded by an artist that actually sells, that actually has people that stream and buy their music. So just been a huge blessing, and to see the number of songs that are being recorded that I've been a part of. I give it all to the Lord, man. I have a lot of faith in my Lord, and I give it all to my Lord and Savior, and He has truly blessed me in this business. One of my biggest things, and if we're going to end here somewhere near here, is I would say to anyone, if you're going to take the advice I'm giving you and you're going to look at your business in a different light, and try to strategize, try to create not only, your creative work, but create the place for your work to be monetized. If you're going to take my advice and build your company into something that you can build it to your dream company, the things that you learn on your path, turn around and share that with someone else that's coming up. We have to, if we're going to take from this business, please give back to it and keep the, keep it going. That's also part of my personal vision statement is I'm going to teach as many people that has an open ear to it because, and lastly, I get asked this a lot. They're like, gas away or bacon or whatever they want to call me. Why are you sharing your secrets with all these people? You're creating your competition. And I'm like, no, I'm just sharing with them what nobody else would share with me, number one. Number two, it's okay if they become my competition because they still have to write a better song. They still have to produce a better song. They still have to come up with a better marketing plan than what I'm going to put together for a company license or something like that. They still have to beat me at the creative game.
And if they do, then they do.
If they do, they do. I mean, that's the game I'm in. I'm on a daily basis competing against other creators, and so I'm already used to that. So, in my opinion, I'm not creating more competition. I'm just, I'm giving back to what's been given to me. That's all I'm doing.
A lot of people ask me, why did I start my podcast? And I go, when I pass along, they're just going to go out and hire another sales rep. You know what I mean? And they'll be like, oh, that Pete guy, oh, yeah, he was a really good sales rep. Oh, good guy. And that's it. Because my dad passed away about a year and a half ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But he had Alzheimer's, and he stopped talking. And you kind of look at that and you go, man, I was kind of going down the same path as my dad. It's like real successful, did really well, raised great kids, in my opinion. And but when he was gone, it's like, oh, so what legacy? What are you leaving behind? And so now
Absolutely.
I got shows in the tens of thousands of downloads and all that, and listened to over 109 countries. People around the world have now listened to my voice, and hopefully my guests. If a songwriter listens to our episode and gets something out of it that they might not even realize now, then it was worth it versus me just going out and selling a pair of cowboy boots.
Yeah, man. I just want people to have hope in whatever it is they're doing. I hope for your podcast reaching the goals that you set for it. Your sales goals. Just having hope and setting up goals that you can actually accomplish to get to the biggest goal. So the stupid. Yeah, I ain't gonna say it's stupid, but you eat an elephant one bite at a time. Is what some folks say. But that's what I hope. But I want to share a couple of things real quick before we end.
Yes, sir.
Anybody out there, just look me up, Sean Gasaway on Facebook.
You're still on my thunder. I was going to say, what's the best? What's the best way for my listeners to get a hold of you and find out what you got coming up?
Well, let's do an edit point right here, and you ask me that real quick. How about that?
I just did. Go ahead, brother.
Okay. Well, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm on Clubhouse now under the name Bacon, but it's got Sean Gasaway next to it. SeanGasaway.com is the absolute best place to go if you want to learn more about me. You can actually contact me from my website as well. You can listen to some of my songs that are out there, and you can also see where I'm going to be on tour coming up later this year. And so, just SeanGasaway.com or Sean Gasaway on all of the social media platforms, even on TikTok. And just hit me up and say hello and let me know you heard the podcast. And if you got any questions or if you want to write with me, if you want to do some collaboration, I'm open to write with anybody. I'm not that kind of person that shuns anyone. I will let my gut instinct determine the crazy test. If you fail the crazy test, then that's a different story. But I follow my gut, and but I'm wide open, man. I just want to see people succeed in whatever it is they're doing in their life, and leaving a legacy for my family to know that I worked my ass off for them. That's what I want to say.
That's what we do. I so appreciate the time. It's been a blast getting to know you. And
yeah, man.
If you do come out to LA and you want the nickel tour, just give me a heads up. And
it'll be sooner than you think. And there's some other things that I'm doing that I'm not going to get into now because I do have to run. But there are some things on the entertainment side of the entertainment business that I'm starting to create partnerships with, and things for Netflix and for Disney Plus and for some of those companies. And so it looks like I will be coming to LA once everything opens back up. So I'll definitely be hollering at you.
There you go. Well, man, I truly appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful day.
You have a blessed day too, man. And I will talk to you soon. Thank you again for having me on your show, man.
Thank you, Sean. I really appreciate it, bud.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.